Welcome to the HCI family of podcasts. We're your source for personal, professional, and organizational growth and development. We share our own original research, explore industry trends, and interview executives and thought leaders from across the globe. Join us for practitioner-oriented content around all things leadership, HR, talent management, organizational development, and change management. Maximize your personal and organizational potential with the HCI family of podcasts. Luke Peters, welcome to the conversation today.
Thanks for having me, John. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's a real pleasure being with you. You're joining us from California, is that right?
Yeah, in Huntington Beach, California, Southern California, 30 minutes, 30 miles, not 30 minutes south of LA.
Yeah, that's a lot more than 30 minutes, depending on traffic, right?
Exactly. You got to do it in miles, not minutes.
That's right. My wife is from San Clemente. And so, when we get out there to visit family, my wife always reminds me it's about miles, not minutes. I'm south of Salt Lake City in Utah. And today we're going to be talking about strategies for hiring and nurturing top talent to create a dynamic team culture. This is a topic I love. I could talk about it all day long. And I'm super excited, Luke, to chat with you about this from your perspective as an entrepreneur and your work in various organizational settings. As we get started, I wanted to share Luke's bio with everybody. Luke Peters is an accomplished entrepreneur and the former CEO of New Air, a company he founded in 2001 and grew from a garage startup to thriving business with over 600 million in cumulative sales. His journey began in Fountain Valley, California, where he learned the value of hard work while working in his family's donut shop for just 25 cents an hour. Under Luke's leadership, New Air achieved significant milestones, including 80 million in sales in a single year and multiple placements on the Inc. 500 list. He successfully pivoted the company from 100% B2C model to a multi-channel strategy, partnering with major retailers like Home Depot and Amazon. In the mid-2021 frame, after 20 years of dedication while retaining 100% of the stock, he sold New Air in a mid-8-figure deal. Today, he serves as strategic CEO coach, leveraging his extensive experience to help other entrepreneurs navigate their paths to success. Now, I could go on, but I'm going to pause there because I know you have some updates for us. Anything you would like to share before we launch on into the conversation today?
No, thanks for the bio. I grew up in a big family, so I have a lot of funny stories, but I'm sure everybody wants to know more about leadership and what I learned along the way and what you're going to bring into it, because I know that's, John, that's a lot of your background as well. But yeah, right now I'm just doing CEO coaching at Apex CEO, but we can talk about that later.
Very good. And the 25 cents an hour at the donut shop, I can kind of relate to that. I never did the donut shop, but I did do a paper route, which I think if I averaged out the pay per hour, probably was about 25 cents an hour.
Yeah, no, it's one of those funny family stories where my dad said, "You ate more donuts than we made profit," So he would joke around, just pay us 25 cents an hour, but you learn hard work, and that was a key ingredient.
Tell us a little bit more about New Air. And you're scaling this up as founders and entrepreneurs often do. You're starting from kind of zero, garage startup. It's one thing to start a business. You're a solopreneur, entrepreneur. You have a small startup team, and over time you start to build, you start to grow. And a lot of times in these small startups, maybe this isn't the case for you, but a lot of times entrepreneurs aren't really thinking about kind of the talent component. They're not really thinking about dynamic team culture because you're just thinking about your product, your service, whatever you're doing, to start the business. But then all of a sudden you start to scale and you start to add people and your team grows and you need to think about org design and you need to think about team culture and all that kind of stuff. Kind of walk us through what that looked like from the early 2000s as you grow over 2 decades, and how you started to put in place, different hiring practices and nurturing that dynamic team culture.
Yeah, no, you hit the nail on the head. That's exactly how I was at the beginning. I studied, although I grew up working, had a cool route, donut shop, delivering newspapers, but I didn't have I studied chemistry and microbiology. Okay, so I didn't study business. In fact, I started this because my little brother didn't go to school and was driving a nice sports car and was making a lot of money. And I graduated and nobody told me if you're going to go into the sciences, you should probably get a PhD, not a bachelor's. And
Mm,
after school, I had a job, but it wasn't paying great. And I'm like, whoa, wait, what is he doing here? And this was right after the dot-com bust, right?
mm,
And that's how the company started. So I didn't have that background and that formal training on business. In fact, I didn't even know what a purchase order was at the beginning,
mm,
right? It was that type of setup. So for the first 10, 15 years, definitely I bounced around trying to learn all these things. I understood how to work hard, and I was creative enough, I think, where I had fun developing the product. Exactly what you just kind of pointed out. We scaled, but I was probably held back by not understanding some of these leadership skills. And then later on, there was a lot that went into it, but later on, I actually the funny thing that kind of kicked it off was I I asked about selling my company. This goes way back to maybe 2016, okay? And I'm talking to a business broker, and the broker said that when someone buys a company, one of the key things they look at is they have to de-risk the deal, okay? And how do they de-risk it? And he went through all the different areas. The first thing is, like, in my industry, you have to be making at least 10% EBITDA, because if you're not doing that, what he said to me was, what does that say about your brand? If you can't mandate that you're going to be able to charge a certain price and that you can, trickle that down to a certain bottom line, what does that say to a buyer? Are they buying a real
mm.
brand, or are they just, are they just going to get into kind of a grinded out type of industry where you have too much competition? Like, you don't have anything that separates you. That was one. And the other thing they said is, you need to have a team around you, because if you're doing everything, they're going to have some pause before
Yeah.
purchasing you, because they're going to say, hey, what if the founder leaves, or what's supporting this company? And so again, that's a de-risk point. So I learned that then, and that kind of set me off on a path of understanding talent, and um, literally refilling every department in my whole company, actually, over the course of the next 4 or 5 years.
So for you, that was about what, 15 years in, it sounds like,
Yeah, it
where
was
you're
about
really
15 years
starting to
in,
think
and
about the first time you're really starting to think about selling, and you're starting to think about now, I mean, I'm sure that's not the first time you're thinking about team culture and whatnot, but it's maybe the first time you're really starting to think about how you restructure your team, how you make your team, more viable without you, those sorts of things. Is that what I'm hearing?
exactly. Yeah. Team culture was something from the very beginning. That's
Hmm.
something that we had from the very beginning. This is more about the point where I understood because early on, when you're grinding it out, a lot of entrepreneurs, you're sort of reticent to spend too much on certain talent, right? You think, oh,
Sure.
I can
Yeah.
get this less experienced person, and they're going to work hard, and you think you're getting a deal. And so the whole time, culture was very important. We could talk about that. But as far as talent, that's really when my eyes were open. Like, wow, you know what? If I bring somebody in here that's already done all of these things, I get to the spot I'm going to, like, 5 times quicker. It's
Hmm.
so much worth hiring that experience, and that was that eye-opening moment for me, and even to the point where um, I had people who had run companies, and they were now at the VP or director, or the VP level, or at the C level, but they had run companies in the past. So I'm bringing in experienced people who knew way more than me in certain areas of finance and sales and other categories like that, and that completely transformed the company.
Yeah, well, let's talk a little bit more about that for a minute, because on the one hand, maybe you went out to find funding, but a lot of entrepreneurs are kind of bootstrapping from the beginning. They're trying to kind of grow organically at the beginning, and that's kind of what I'm guessing you were doing, because you were talking about trying to get cheap labor. You're trying to bring people on your team, without a heavy price tag. Is that accurate?
That is exactly accurate. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So let's talk about that, because on the one hand, so in your case, you're bootstrapping, right? You're trying to slowly build your team. You're trying to do it without having talent that's too expensive, um, quote unquote, too expensive, right? But on the
Mhm.
one hand, it's an expense. On the other hand, it's an investment, right? And over time, you start to realize, oh, that's an investment. I can I can 5x the output if I get someone who's really experienced, someone who's really talented. We can progress way faster, which means we're going to grow our brand faster. We're going to grow our market um, reach faster. We're going to increase our sales faster, etc. But it means there's more risk sooner, because we haven't had that organic growth yet. Talk through that a little bit more. Is there anything you would have done differently in hindsight
Yeah,
regarding that bootstrapping versus like going out and finding funding or getting more loans or anything like that early on?
yeah, and we never went out and got funding. So we did this all, through banks. Okay, so we never had to give up any equity. But what I learned is that oftentimes as entrepreneurs, and this is even working with other friends, clients, and even my daughter who started a business, a lot of times we want to wait to make the big hire or investment until we feel like we financially can make it. But the
Hmm.
truth is, we actually can make it, say, right now, but we want to get so far ahead because we're being conservative, that we actually wait too long. Okay, we're waiting like 2 years, 3 years to make this investment when we should have made it 2 or 3 years ago. So I think that's the biggest thing that comes out of it is just waiting too long to understand the leverage you get when you bring in that
Mm.
top talent. And the other thing is you can definitely do it organically and grow some of the talent. And we definitely had some of that expertise. And I don't think there's any shame in this for anybody, in your company, in one's company or from the outside. But I think using recruiters that are really good, really understand, like an executive recruiter that really understands top talent and they know the talent in your local area, is well worth it.
Mm.
Number one, they're going to bring you people that you would have never found yourself, and they're going to talk you up a little bit. Like some of these people may not want to join your company until they learn a little bit more, maybe from the inside scoop from that recruiter, and you're bringing in expertise from the outside, especially in areas like finance, which can be hard to grow internally, and sales. Okay, if someone comes in with real specific experience with certain buyers or certain categories that you're in, and of course marketing, which is so important, and then supply chain. We had to do it everywhere, okay, because we're
Hmm.
doing things like implementing a new ERP. Okay, if you don't have top talent and you're putting an ERP in and you're hoping and praying that it's that you're going to be able to be a part of that, it's going to be a disaster. That would be one example.
I guess thinking hmm, not just short term, which is hard when you're bootstrapping and when you're just trying to, keep the doors open, you're trying to make payroll, whatever. But trying to think strategically long term, trying to think about the value of the talent, trying to use recruiters, all of that, I think is, any of us sitting here kind of armchair quarterbacking, we could say, oh, yeah, of course you want to do all of that. It's hard, though, when you're the one in making the calls and you're the one having to deal with the consequences of those calls, I think. Anyways, it's a hard thing. That's why entrepreneurship is tough. That's why
Yeah.
that's why a lot of organizations don't stick around, within those first 5 years or so.
Mm-hmm.
So you're learning these lessons as you're going through these years of New Air. Tell us a little bit more about the culture dynamic. So you talked about how culture was part of what you're focusing on from the very beginning, even before that hiring component, was really a focus. What was your focus around that team culture, and how did you start to develop it and nurture it?
Yeah, that's a good question. So what I learned, John, was that early on, again, you're a growing company, so maybe you don't have the funding, and you're even competing with Google and Amazon and these other
Yeah,
companies
yeah.
that have the free meals all day long and those types of things. So I did a lot of research into it. I said, okay, how what do people really appreciate? So from a culture standpoint, what I learned is if obviously people want to be treated respectfully. There was a situation way back. This is maybe 2008, and one of our managers was kind of showing up one of the warehouse guys. Okay. But he was doing it in front of other warehouse employees.
Mm,
Okay. And this is sort of a teaching moment. It's like you never do that, right? You never embarrass somebody in front of their coworkers. That is maybe the the worst thing you can do as a leader. That all has to happen behind closed doors. And that would be an example of something that we just eradicated, and of course it could still happen if I'm not around, but those are the type of talking points we have about leadership. The other thing is that what I learned is that, yeah, all of these things about showing respect and all of these common phrases are important, but the two most important things were, do people have friends at work? Okay,
Mm.
so if people have friends at work, they enjoy going to work. And how can you facilitate that as a leader? You can have events. You can have, and the events don't have to cost a lot. If you go bowling, if you shut down the warehouse early so the whole team can head out on your time, not on their time, right? You head out at like 3 or 4 o'clock and you go bowling, or you have a sports league like we had, softball teams and basketball teams, and that creates sort of community and people have something to look forward to, and then they hang out after hours and they have friends, and you create those bonds within the company, and you're not having to really force it. You just kind of do it organically by just creating this organization that cares about the company. It's not super expensive. It's actually easy to do and fun to do. So that was definitely a key thing that we built into it. And then, when you're trying to hire top performers, they expect a lot. And a lot of times with smaller companies, and that was the case with ours, I'm talking about maybe when we were even 20, $30 million. Okay. And
Mm.
usually around this time, we might have like, 30, 45 employees, just depends on the years we're growing up. And to give everybody an idea, 30 to 45 team members, we were doing everything from the global supply chain, so that means all of the warehousing, distribution, all of that. There's a team there. We had, the finance, the sales, marketing. So sometimes there's a division, right? You got
Mhm.
upstairs versus downstairs type of stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. But when you're just out playing softball or going bowling or having a monthly team lunch, you try to get rid of that. And then you try to have people sit together, and, you don't just have all of one department sits here and all of another department sits there. So we actually got kind of granular. Sometimes we'd have seating arrangements and stuff like that. Anyways, uh, top performers don't want to come into chaos. And a lot of times, companies that are growing, small entrepreneurial companies, there is chaos. Let's face it, there's chaos. They need systems. So that was the other part. You can create this culture, you can create these events, you can create that you care about the team and the friendships, but then you also need to have organizational processes. Okay, because you go hire a director from a Fortune 500 company, and they're going to come into your company probably as a VP, right? And they're going to be like, wait a minute, you guys don't have year-end planning? I don't have a budget to work off of. All the roles for my team are not defined. They don't know where they start and stop. All of those things can be huge problems. So you kind of have to fix that first before you go out and bring in that top level talent.
I think that's really cool. You shared a bunch of examples of how we can develop that culture. And I like the emphasis you put on fostering those friendships on company time. A lot of times I hear about um, organizations encouraging things like happy hours or things like that, and they kind of put pressure on their people to do it, but it's after hours, right? And so people feel like pressure to go, to the bar or whatever, go get drinks, but they have friends or family commitments after work, and now they feel pressure to go with their coworkers, and it goes from something that could potentially be developing relationships and friendships organically to something that's just a duty, something that they have to do, and you lose that potential. Like it just
Yeah,
becomes an annoyance, right? But
exactly.
you let work out, like let everyone leave an hour early, go do the same thing, pay for their drinks or for a meal or whatever. And
Mm-hmm.
now it's a fairly inexpensive way for people to do it on the company's time. And it may continue past, when it's on company time, and they may continue to do it of their own free accord afterwards. But it's like one of those really simple things. And it seemed like as we're talking about it, and I think most people listening would say, yeah, that's a no-brainer. Like, of course you should do it that way. But most companies don't do it that way. Like when I hear about most companies and most people who work at different organizations, and I hear about how they do happy hours, that's not how they do it the way you just described it. So sometimes it's just really simple things that we can do that are low cost or no cost opportunities to develop camaraderie, friendship, morale, upgrade morale within the teams of your organization. I really like the way when you started to see that there's kind of a two-tier, employee, hierarchy within the organization, that you made a real point of making sure that at mealtime that's broken down. Like you don't have to have the people in the warehouse versus the people in the office or whatever, right? Like you're just
Yeah.
we're all working together. We're all part of the same team. And we all can be friends and we can all, we're all working towards the same goal. Like I love that. And there's no reason why we can't have that in any organization we work in. We don't have to have those artificial, boundaries and constraints and how we interact with each other. Yet they tend to emerge, especially as organizations get larger. They tend to that those boundaries, those walls tend to go up unless we're really proactive about keeping them, kind of at bay, right?
Exactly. Yeah. It's always, yeah, of course, you're never going to be perfect and people will complain. But like as a leader, you can't take any of that personal. Like, that's your job as a leader. You got to keep going forward because even if there's some challenges or complaints or whatever, I'm sure 90% of the people really appreciate what's going on and it's something they look forward to. And the other thing is that one thing is, American workers are very creative. Okay. I think it's because of our upbringing. And we had people from all over the world. That's why I said, we worked directly with China quite a bit, and workers everywhere are great. You're going to find strengths all over the world, but American workers in particular, I think, are very creative. So what you want to do is you want to kind of, I know there's the word empower is kind of overused, right?
Mm.
So, you have to empower, but how do you do that? In my experience, it's actually teaching the why on why they need to achieve something in their department. Okay. And this can be done at these all staff meetings. These are fun meetings. You let, team members from different departments go up there and speak, and they can shine a little bit in front of everybody and be proud about what they accomplished. But if you just set goals and you don't explain the why behind those goals, you just say, okay, we need to meet these targets. But then once you explain the why, your team will be creative and they will find a way to get there because now they're going to understand context behind, oh, okay, now I see why they want to do that. Otherwise, it could seem, like maybe there's some big change in accounting and they're like, oh my gosh, why do we have to go through this? Or some big change in the warehouse. But when they understand the why and they can see the end point in the context, they're going to get you there. And I think that's an important thing that I learned also later on. Whereas early on, everything was in my head, and it was just like, gosh, how come they don't understand me? Oh, probably because I wasn't explaining things properly, so that was kind of on me. And but it's very valuable.
Luke, I think we could go on. There's so much more on this topic. It's a topic that I love, but I also note the time. I need to let you get on with your busy day. Before we wrap things up for today, I wanted to give you a chance to share with the audience how they can connect with you, find out more about your work, your team, and then give us a final word on the topic for today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you again. Really appreciate you having me on here. It was a great conversation. So you can find me over at apexceo.co, also on LinkedIn at Luke Peters. And you can learn more about kind of the CEO style and how I work with different clients over at Apex CEO. And on leadership, I would say, listen, not some people are born leaders, but through entrepreneurship, I think most of us have to learn these things as we build our companies, and it can be sped up if you bring the right talent in. But I would say to be okay with the process. Okay, sometimes we're in the process and we think we're making mistakes. That's just part of the learning process. If you're a CEO and you're listening to this, you'll get there. You just have to keep an open mind, keep working with people better than you, and you'll get there.
Yeah, keep working with people better than you. That is the key. And that's something
Yep.
that sometimes people are nervous about. They're worried about getting found out. They're insecure,
Mm-hmm.
whatever. Work with people that are better than you. That is the number one. All right, Luke, thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure. I encourage the audience to reach out, get connected, find out more about what Luke and his team can do for you. And as always, I hope everyone can stay healthy and safe, that you can find meaning and purpose at work each and every day. And I hope you all have a great week. Thanks for joining us for this episode of the podcast. We hope you stay healthy and safe, and please join us again soon.